Hey, everybody, welcome back. We're going deep today on something super relevant, in this digital age.
Yeah, the impact of misinformation and how important it is to kind of control your own narrative. And to help us kind of unpack this, we've got two sources today. The first is an anecdote from the Spiz from Twisty newsletter.
Oh, the spid.
Yeah, but the origin of paper straws.
Okay.
And then we'll be looking at a page called Wall of Love for Twisty Chiropractic, #1 Growth Coordinator, which is just chock full of testimonials about Twisty and his marketing expertise. So are you ready to
Yeah,
dive in?
let's do it.
All right, so this paper straw story
Okay.
from Twisty's newsletter, it's wild. It all starts with this fourth grader who is researching plastic straw usage for a school project. And
Yeah.
he couldn't find the answer on Google, so he calls up a straw manufacturer directly. I mean,
Wow.
who does that?
That's amazing.
Like,
A very resourceful kid. But here's the thing. The manufacturer gives this kid an estimate of 500 million straws used daily, which is actually a pretty fascinating.
yeah, and it turns out it was 3 times higher than the actual usage.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So this 500 million number ends up in this kid's school paper, which then somehow goes viral. And the New York Times, CNN, all these big outlets, they pick up the story.
Yeah.
And they don't even fact check it. It's
Yeah.
just like this
Yeah, talk about
snowball effect.
it's a snowball effect, and it's fascinating, and it really highlights how easy it is for misinformation, even if it's unintentional, to take root and spread.
Right. And what was the impact of this?
Well, I mean, widespread concern about plastic straw usage
Yeah.
ultimately led to kind of the mass adoption of paper straws that we see today.
Okay, but I mean, wasn't there at least some truth to the concern about plastic straws? Even if the number was inflated, didn't it bring attention to a real environmental issue?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it wasn't a complete fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
And it did lead to, positive change ultimately. But it also highlights how susceptible we are as a society to latch onto these simple, shocking numbers without really digging deeper into the truth. And it raises questions about media responsibility and our own critical thinking skills.
Yeah, for sure. So what does Twisty take away from this whole paper straw saga?
Well, he uses this anecdote to drive home some pretty key lessons for controlling your narrative. First, he says, control your message. Make sure the information that you're putting out there is accurate and actually represents your position. Second, own your positioning. Be super clear about what you stand for and why. And finally, he says you have to fight bad information with compelling truth. So if there's misinformation out there about you or your work, don't just ignore it. You have to address it head on with your own powerful and compelling narrative.
Okay, so control your message, own your positioning, and fight bad information with truth. I mean, those are some pretty solid takeaways, especially in today's world where it seems like everyone has a platform and information just spreads so quickly. It seems more important than ever to be in control of your own story.
Absolutely.
Speaking of controlling your narrative, let's move on to this wall of love for Twisty. This is full of testimonials from a surprisingly diverse group of people. You've got chiropractors, business leaders, authors like Patrick Bet-David and Brian Tracy.
Wow.
Yeah, even Tucker Max and Roger Stone.
That is quite a range. It seems like his approach really resonates with people from all walks of life. And that's something worth noting. I mean, not every marketing strategy can achieve that kind of reach.
Right, and some of these quotes are pretty interesting. For example, Tucker Max says, "The Circle of Life strategy is the stupidest name for his content strategy, but Tristan is a genius."
Uh-huh.
What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, it's a great example of an authentic testimonial. He's not just giving this blind praise. He acknowledges a potential flaw, which is the name of the strategy. But he ultimately emphasizes the positive. And that actually makes the testimonial more believable, don't you think?
Yeah, it comes across as more genuine that way.
Yeah.
And then you've got Roger Stone, who says, "Sharp young man, your I got stoned at summer camp t-shirt sold out in 24 hours on my site, too." Maybe not the most professional endorsement, but it definitely hints at Twisty's personality and his marketing savvy.
For sure.
And it's not just these big names either. You've got tons of testimonials from everyday folks who are crediting Twisty with helping them grow their businesses and achieve some really impressive results. And a lot of these people mention his Spiz newsletter and this summer camp event, which we'll definitely have to dig into a little bit more later.
Okay.
But what really strikes me is how many people use the word genius to describe Twisty. It's one thing to be called smart or talented, but genius suggests something a little more, don't you think? What is it about his approach that seems to elicit that kind of reaction?
That's a great question. And it's definitely something worth exploring. I think it's a combination of things. First, he clearly has a deep understanding of marketing and business growth. These testimonials are packed with specific examples of how he's helped people achieve some really tangible results. But it's more than just technical skills. There's also this element of creativity, this willingness to really think outside the box. He doesn't seem afraid to challenge conventional wisdom and come up with these really innovative strategies. And you can sense that in the testimonials. There's this excitement about his unconventional approach. And finally, there's this recurring theme of him genuinely wanting to help others succeed. People describe him as a helpful support of someone who goes the extra mile. It's not just about the money for him. He seems to really care about his clients and their success. And that kind of authenticity really resonates with people.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like he's walking the walk, not just talking the talk. He's built this whole system around controlling your narrative. And by all accounts, he's doing a pretty good job of controlling his own.
It seems that way.
But before we kind of get ahead of ourselves here, let's unpack some of these key pieces a little more. What exactly is this Spiz newsletter that everyone keeps raving about? And what makes it so valuable?
Judging from these testimonials, the Spiz seems to be more than just your average newsletter. People describe it as a source of innovative information, practical wisdom, and fresh ideas. Several even mention enjoying the daily content, which is pretty impressive for something as simple as an email.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely the type to hit unsubscribe pretty quickly if a newsletter isn't grabbing my attention. So what do you think it is about the Spiz that makes it stand out from all the noise?
Well, it seems like Twisty has this knack for taking complex ideas and making them accessible and engaging.
Yeah.
He doesn't just throw information at you. He distills it down into these bite-sized pieces. They're easy to digest. Kind of like what we try to do here, actually.
Uh-huh. Well, I appreciate the comparison, but going back to that paper straw story for a second, it really seems like Twisty is practicing what he preaches. He's not waiting for someone else to tell his story or define his expertise. He's out there delivering a clear, concise, and valuable message directly to his audience, on his own terms.
Exactly, and it's clearly resonating. Now, you mentioned that this summer camp event keeps popping up in these testimonials. So maybe we should shift gears for a minute and see what we can learn about that.
Yeah, okay, so based on what we're seeing here, summer camp sounds like a live event, maybe like a conference or a workshop focused on business growth and marketing, and people are calling it amazing. They're highlighting how easy Twisty is to work with. It seems like a space where attendees can network, learn from him directly, and gain practical strategies that they can use to grow their businesses.
Yeah, you definitely get the sense that it's not just about the content, though. There's this strong emphasis on community and connection. People talk about feeling inspired, motivated, and energized after attending. It almost sounds more like, well, summer camp than a business conference.
That's actually a really interesting point. I'm curious, why do you think he chose the name summer camp? What's the connection there?
Well, it's hard to say for sure without more information, but I think it's a deliberate choice. He's trying to evoke a certain feeling, a sense of fun and camaraderie. Remember what summer camp was like? It was about trying new things, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, and building those relationships. So it seems like Twisty is trying to recreate that atmosphere in a professional context.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely not your typical stuffy business seminar. It seems to be more about personal and professional growth with a healthy dose of fun thrown in. And, it ties back into that theme of authenticity that we keep coming back to. He's not afraid to be himself, to be a little unconventional, even if it means giving his event a quirky name.
Right? It's about being memorable, standing out from the crowd, and creating an experience that people will connect with on an emotional level. That's powerful stuff.
Absolutely. But, we've talked a lot about these positive testimonials, how they highlight Twisty's expertise and personality. But let's flip the script for a second. How do we as consumers of information evaluate someone's expertise? What are some red flags that we should be looking out for?
That's such a crucial question. Especially in the age of influencers and online gurus, it's so easy to get swept up in the hype. One thing to watch out for is vagueness. If someone is making grand claims but can't back them up with specific examples or results, that's a major red flag.
Right. It's the difference between saying, like, this program changed my life versus this program helped me increase my sales by 20% in 3 months. One is an emotional appeal, the other is data-driven.
Exactly. And while those emotional testimonials can be really powerful, they shouldn't be the only evidence you rely on. Look for consistency, too. Do multiple sources corroborate what this person is saying? Are there reputable organizations or individuals that are vouching for them?
Right, that makes sense. It's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of your own intuition. If something feels off or inauthentic, trust your gut. Do your own research, dig a little deeper, and make sure you're comfortable with the information that you're consuming.
Solid advice. Okay, so we've covered the paper straw story, the Spiz newsletter, and this really intriguing summer camp event. But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't really explored yet. Twisty's role as a chiropractic #1 growth coordinator. What does that even mean?
Based on his website and the testimonials, it seems that Twisty specializes in helping chiropractors grow their businesses. He provides marketing guidance, helps them develop their online presence, and essentially acts as a strategic partner to boost their overall success.
It's interesting that he's carved out this niche for himself within the chiropractic field. I mean, it's not the first industry you'd think of when it comes to cutting-edge marketing, right?
You'd be surprised. The principles of marketing and business growth, they apply across industries. And remember, chiropractors often rely heavily on word of mouth and personal referrals. So in that sense, it's a perfect fit for Twisty's approach, which is all about crafting a compelling narrative and building those authentic connections.
That's a good point. It's about understanding your target audience and tailoring your message to resonate with them.
Exactly. And it seems like he's doing just that. While a lot of the testimonials are coming from chiropractors, we're also seeing praise from people in other fields, which suggests that his strategies and insights can be applied more broadly.
Okay, so we've got this picture of Twisty as this marketing whiz, but we haven't really dug into the specifics of how he does what he does. Can you kind of break down some of his key strategies or techniques for us? What makes his approach so unique?
That's where it gets really interesting. One of his key principles,
Mm.
we see it's mentioned in several of these testimonials, is this idea of the circle of life strategy for content. It's a bit of a quirky name, as Tucker Max pointed out,
Right.
but it seems to be really effective.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for us. What is the circle of life strategy, and how does it tie into this whole idea of controlling your narrative?
Well, from what I can gather, it's all about creating content that is designed to be shared and repurposed across multiple platforms. It's about maximizing the reach and impact of every piece of content that you produce.
So instead of just creating a blog post, for example, you would also turn it into like a social media graphic, maybe a short video, even a snippet for your newsletter. Is that the idea?
Exactly. You got it. It's about thinking strategically about how your content can live on and continue to work for you, even after you've initially published it.
Okay, so it's about working smarter, not harder. And it plays into that idea of controlling your narrative, too. You're not just putting content out there and hoping it sticks. You're actively guiding how it's consumed and shared.
Right. And it seems like another key element of Twisty's approach is this emphasis on building genuine relationships with your audience. He talks a lot about the importance of authenticity and transparency.
Yeah, and we've seen that reflected in these testimonials, too. People talk about how approachable and helpful he is, how he goes above and beyond to support them. It's not just a transactional relationship. It's about building a community.
And that's a really powerful thing. When people feel like they know, like trust you, they're much more likely to listen to your message, engage with your content, and ultimately become loyal customers or clients.
It all comes back to that human connection, doesn't it? Even in the digital age,
Mhm.
people crave authenticity and connection.
Absolutely. We're not just robots consuming information. We're emotional beings who are looking for meaning and connection.
Well said. Okay, so we've learned about the paper straw story, the Spiz newsletter, the summer camp event, the circle of life content strategy, this focus on building relationships. I mean, that's a lot to take in, but it paints a pretty fascinating picture of Twisty and his approach to marketing and personal branding.
Definitely. It's a very interesting case study. And I think there's some really valuable lessons here for all of us, regardless of our industry or profession.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive has really gotten me thinking about my own narrative,
Yeah.
about how I present myself to the world and the messages that I'm putting out there. It's a good reminder that we all have a story to tell, and it's up to us to make sure that it's heard.
And to make sure that it's a story we're proud of,
Mm.
a story that reflects our values, our expertise, and our genuine desire to make a positive impact.
Well said. So what does this all mean for our listeners? What's the one key takeaway that you hope they walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that you have more power than you might realize to shape your own narrative. So don't be afraid to take control of your message. Build those authentic connections with your audience and put yourself out there in a way that feels true to you.
I love that. It's empowering, isn't it? It's a reminder that we're not just passive consumers of information. We can be active creators of our own stories.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one day We'll be featuring your story on this very show.
Haha, I like the sound of that. Well, on that note, we'll be sure to include links to the Spiz newsletter and the Wall of Love testimonials in the show notes so you can explore Twisty's world for yourself.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, the power to shape your story is in your hands.
Until next time, keep diving deep.